a second in our Versus series, which, has been very popular. I got to say, when we did LSU versus Ohio State wide receivers, y'all had lots to say. So now we're going to take a look at offensive line. Michigan versus Notre Dame. And I think this was a little bit more involved because if you're an offensive line guru, yeah, you know that these two programs produce a bunch of talent. But if you're going to knock them head to head, who's better at producing talent? And both of these teams love to run the football. Both of these teams are very proud of their offensive line tradition. And both of these teams have had some outstanding draft picks that they developed at each institution. So I came up with a rubric that I'm going to give you to try to identify which one of these programs, Michigan or Notre Dame, is better at producing offensive linemen. This is another disclaimer. This is not an OLU segment. This is a Michigan versus Notre Dame segment. Okay? Different discussion. So let's start with points and how they're awarded to each program. 25 points for a Joe Moore Award win. So, there's only been around since 2015. And that's why I have it on par with 25 points for a Remington Award win, because I get the Joe Moore Award as the team trophy, and I know that it means the world to offensive line rooms. I mean, Bill Bedenbaugh made that very clear when Oklahoma first won that award. But seeing as it doesn't have a big sample size, I didn't want to make it that much more weighted than, say, the Remington Award, which has been around since 2000, and we have more data to pull from and more opportunities to win the trophy, right? That's my way of trying to be fair. So 25 points for a Joe Moore Award win, 25 points for a Remington Award win, because you can only have one of those asterisks there because we're going to get to it. And then 18 points for a first-team All-Pro selection, and then 15 points for a first-round draft pick, 15 points for a consensus All-American, it's a big one, and then 1 point for each round you had a player draft, which means I just dropped the part where I just said 1 point for each round after the first. I just gave you the extra point because more points is more points, right? So let's go through the math real quick and see how these two teams stacked up to give us something like an empirical explanation for why one might be better than the other at producing offensive linemen. Okay. So University of Michigan had 22 total offensive line draft picks since 2000, which is where I started all of these. I went back to 2000 because I can get data from 2000 forward. And if we go any farther back, we start playing with different eras of football. And I'm not interested in counting offensive linemen that were drafted post-World War II. Different kind of football. I mean, if I wanted to be frank about it, I didn't want to go back to integration, 1970, right? Let's keep it at 2000. 21 offensive line draft picks from Notre Dame since 2000 means 21 points. So 22 to 21 already, they're neck and neck. 5 first-round draft picks from Michigan, right? That's 5 times 15, 75 points. And then the same amount for Notre Dame, which I did not expect. 5 first-round draft picks for Notre Dame, 75 points. 6 first-team All-Pro, not All-Americans, first-team All-Pro selections for Michigan. But Steve Hutchinson has 5 of those, and Jake Long has 1. Steve Hutchinson made first-team All-Pro 5 times. That blew my mind. I went to go look at that. It's like, is that right? So, yeah, Steve Hutchinson's got 5 of the 6 for the University of Michigan. But there are 7 first-team All-Pro selections for the University of Notre Dame, for which Zach Martin has 6, which led me to think, Zach Martin, one of the 2 greatest guards to ever play football. Anthony Munoz over there, and then Zach Martin. It's a good discussion. We're going to get to another Notre Dame player here, I assure you. And then 1 All-Pro selection, first team for Ronnie Stanley. So that's 6 for Martin, 1 for Stanley. That's 7 All-Pro selections. So you got 108 for the 6 for the Michigan, and you got 126 for the 7 from Notre Dame. Okay. There were 2 Joe Moore Award wins for Michigan over the last 7 years. That's ridiculous. But also, tip of the cap to Jim Harbaugh and his ability to put outstanding offensive lines out, because you got to see the product of such a thing in 2022 when they were able to basically get Blake Corum whatever room he needed to be great. And then when he was not able to go, the same thing was true of Donovan Edwards. And that's just the 2022 group, which is outstanding. Notre Dame has not produced a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line yet. They've done 1. They got 1, 2017. Because I remember I put this down and producer Tyler was like, no, we got that one. I said, you know what? You're right. So that's 25 points. 3 Remington Award wins for Michigan. And one of those, actually, you had 2 Remington Award winners, which I did not expect to see. But that's 75 points for them. And then 0 Remington Award wins for Notre Dame. That's the 0 that I actually got right the first time. And then consensus All-Americans. This one was a little bit interesting to me, if for no other reason than consensus All-American, I think, is much harder to come by than first-team All-American because, well, the FWAA and, say, the AP are not always in lockstep. So having someone that is getting 4 out of 5, right, is important, especially since we got a lot of first-team All-Americans. And the reason I say we got a lot of first-team All-Americans is that's a prerequisite for getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. If you have not been voted to a first-team All-America team, you are ineligible as a player to get into the College Football Hall of Fame. So University of Michigan has had 6 consensus All-Americans. Steve Hutchinson, who's a monster, David Bass, Jake Long, Dave Moak, and Victor Oluwatimi, right? That's 2 for Steve Hutchinson and 2 for Jake Long, who just outstanding to get him to 6. That's 90 points for 15 piece. Consensus All-Americans for Notre Dame, 4, right? Ronnie Stanley, Mike McGlinchey, Quentin Nelson, and Liam Eichenberg. Now, Quentin Nelson is also that dude that I was alluding to when I was talking about Zach Martin, one of the 3 best guards of all time, right? And now I'm looking at it. You got an argument for 2 Notre Dame products, perhaps being 2 of the 3 best guards to ever play football. I mean, you take it back to Quentin Nelson and maybe getting robbed of a trophy here or there during his last year at Notre Dame, because the more I hear offensive line folks talk about Quentin Nelson, the more I'm made to understand that he's just an absolute freak. The things that he's able to do are not things that you're supposed to be able to do, period. And the idea that he plays guard and does those things, which many people think is the least skillful position on an offensive line, blows their minds a little bit more. So what is the final tally on these things? Well, turns out Notre Dame was able to accumulate 307 points across this rubric that I created. But that was nowhere near close to Michigan's total of 419 points. So in 2023, going back to 2000, using the criteria such as first team All-Pro, Remington Award winner, Joe Moore Award winner, first round draft picks, the lot of it, Michigan has just been that much better at producing offensive linemen than Notre Dame. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.